Okay, so you've already done the work of identifying the specific argument. That's a really big part of it, and that's not always easy to do. Like in essays like this and in Orwell's essay, when they're using a lot of imagery and it's not a straightforward essay with a thesis statement, it can be hard to pinpoint that argument. So I wanted to show you mine. I don't want you to use this one in your essays. This is mine, so don't plagiarize from me. But I think this is the argument. I said the invasion of England into her real life prohibited her ability to think freely and left her incapable of opinions that derive from physical reality. So I think that's the argument she's making. I would probably want to make that more general. I might say imperialism invades into a real life and prohibits people from free thinking. But what I'm saying there is that I think her argument is that she exists in a place in Jamaica, no, in Antigua. She exists in Antigua, and her physical reality is a certain way. And she, in the first part of her essay, has all sorts of observations about why the English way of doing things doesn't really work for what her life is actually like. Can you guys find in that first page, in the first 2 pages, can you find instances where she's pointing out that English life does not fit with hers? Yeah, Kale?
There's a slight one on the third one. It's like her father was wearing an English hat, which didn't really the fact that she decided that he had to have that episode.
Exactly. So this is on the top of page 366. And I don't know that I actually told you guys this. As we're talking about the text, you should be writing little notes in the margins because that's your way of taking notes. And then when you have to go and you have to write about this, you'll have so many ideas to draw from. And even though that was Kale's idea, I think it's a really good one. And that's why we're in a seminar, not a seminar, a little discussion together. And so we can all steal each other's ideas. So she said it's right on the top of 366. It says, felt was not the proper material from which a hat that was expected to provide shade from the hot sun should be made. So we know right there, she's being very critical of these English ideas determining how her and her family do things, right? Is there another instance, Haley?
When she's talking about what she has for breakfast.
Yeah, why is that feel stupid to her now?
Because whenever she would talk to people, they didn't like feeling that full.
Yes. Yeah, this is right at the end of that same paragraph on 366. She says, no one I knew liked eating so much food so early in the day. It made us feel sleepy and tired. But because it was an English breakfast, they did it anyway, right? They felt like they had to because England is so much better than Antigua, or at least that's what she's been being fed. Fed upon. Anything else that is signaling that the way of English life does not work for her? Zach?
So she said she was expected to be use silverware and be proper, but she preferred to eat with her hands.
Yes, but then I knew that I enjoyed my food more when I ate it with my bare hands, right? So now we have physical reality that it doesn't work. The sun is not stopped by the felt hat. Then we have the health of the people that they don't feel good physically when they eat that much food in the morning. And then we get this thing about preferences. She had opinions, right? She had preferences based on what her real life was like, and that was eating with her hands, and she liked her food more when she ate it that way, and yet she's being forced to eat it with a fork and knife. Yeah, Kale?
I do feel like that one was slightly more of a child thing because as a child,
Yeah.
I used to eat my hands.
Yes, definitely. I mean, maybe we are all indoctrinated in these certain ways that make us want to rebel because we have these childish preferences that we don't want to be imposed upon, right? Like there's all sorts of things I like doing as a kid that I don't do anymore, but I'm kind of bitter about it. So I think that's one of her points here is that she had preferences and she could have developed those on her own, but instead all of these rules about England are dominating her life. And then how does that end up later in the story? How does she treat the English? Yeah, Jeff.
You're just like a total jerk. No matter who it is,
Yep.
It's just like English sucks and so do you.
Yes, she hates it. She hates everyone she meets in England. She hates the cliffs of Dover, which are supposedly beautiful, and she's saying, no, not to me, you know? She can't form unbiased opinions anymore. It's all based on that kind of imposition as a kid. Yeah, Kale.
I do think it's a little ironic that she mentioned that she had 2 cards and
Yes.
and I'm looking at the cards of England, and so it's a little ironic that she's getting angry at still living a very English lifestyle.
Maybe, but I think, like, just to be clear, she lived in America and then visited England. So maybe she was able to justify it by being like, these aren't English things that I like, these are American things that I like now, you know? But I mean, we could say, yeah, but a lot of our cultural stuff comes from England too, but she doesn't make that claim here. Yeah, at the end though, she's unable to have these like free thinking, right? And she says, right the very last line of the essay, she says, starting with the map before me in my classroom and ending with the trip I had just taken. Oh, sorry, I should start earlier than that. All right, she's talking about the Dover cliffs, and she says, they were dirty and they were steep. They were so steep, the correct height from which all my views of England, starting with the map before me in my classroom and ending with the trip I had just taken, should jump and die and disappear forever. So what is she wishing about her opinions about England and her biases about England? She is a total jerk about them, but there's a kind of tone right there at the end that she takes towards those feelings. Yeah, Kim.
She regrets kind of that she didn't do anything sooner, didn't realize it sooner.
Okay, good. She's regretting kind of like her immaturity about it, maybe. Kaja, what were you gonna say?
Basically the same thing.
Yeah.
Regretting her feelings and
Yeah.
wishing she would wishing she could form her own opinion on England or someone form it for her.
Yeah, let's talk about who she's blaming for this. Is she blaming herself, saying like, I'm being so mean and so biased and I should stop doing that? Or is she blaming something else for it? Yeah. She's blaming her education. Yeah. And a little bit earlier, she says like, it wasn't that one person did this, right? I can't blame Mrs. Smith, my teacher, for making us do this. And she even says like, who are these people? This is on page 374, that first full paragraph, right at the beginning of that one. She says, who are these people who forced me to think of them all the time, who forced me to think that the world I knew was incomplete or without substance or did not measure up because it was not England, that I was incomplete or without substance and did not measure up because I was not English. Who were these people? She repeats that question over and over again. Then she says, the person sitting next to me couldn't give me a clue. No one person could. In any case, if I had said to her, I find England ugly, I hate England, the weather is like a jail sentence, the English are a very ugly people, the food in England is like a jail sentence, the hair of English people is so straight, so dead looking, the English have an unbearable smell, that's my favorite part, so different from the smell of people I know, real people of course, she would have said that I was a person full of prejudice. And I think right here, what she's saying is that there's a difference between people and a person. I feel this way a little bit. I don't really like people. I'm not a fan of us as a human race. I think we're kind of rotten. I don't like people, but I love individuals. Like when I get to know people and I actually interact with single people, like one person, I love a person, but I don't really like people. And I think that's what she's kind of pointing out here, is that people have done this to her, and so that it makes it so that she can't form correct or unbiased opinions about a person. Like she can't be kind about a person anymore. Yeah.
I think part of that stems from the fact that she was lied.
Yeah.
She was told England was this great place, and now that she's actually visited it, she realizes that it's not so great. People are not.
Yeah.
Maybe they weren't as mean as she's describing it. Maybe they just weren't like super pleasant.
Good.
Because she assumed that they would all be pleasant, singing to the roof.
And I actually think it's kind of like a mixture of both. Like at the beginning of this essay, the teacher presents England like this magical, mystical place. It's a jewel that everyone should, that you can only own if you're a special person, right? And her reaction to that was like, ugh, I hate it. Don't try and force this place on me. So that by the time she gets to England, she's like predisposed to see it in this really negative light. Whereas if she had just gone to England for the first time without ever hearing anything about it, who's been to England anyway? It's nice, right? I like it. It's the countryside is beautiful. The cities are clean and like I like that place. It's got a lot of culture. It's a great place. I've never been to Antigua, so I can't make the comparison. But she's ready to hate it as soon as she shows up because of what they did to her as a kid by forcing her to like the place. Okay, so that's the argument. you've got the argument, I think, down. You're ready to write about the argument. But your rhetorical analysis, and we've talked about this quite a lot, but I'm just reminding you, it's about which language choices does she make that will persuade her audience that her argument is true. And in the past, we talked about logos, ethos, and pathos, and how she built those rhetorical modes, right? So like, how did she build the emotion in this section? How does she build the credibility in this section? But we're gonna try to be a little bit more specific about how we talk about the language, because it's not necessarily about logos, ethos, pathos. It is about what kind of choices she makes as a writer that the audience is going to respond to. So let's look at this sentence from that same paragraph that I read to you, where I said the argument was. It says, I did not know then that the statement, draw a map of England, was something far worse than a declaration of war. For in fact, a flat out declaration of war would have put me on alert. And again, in fact, there was no need for war. I had long ago been conquered. Okay, in your groups, have a 2-minute discussion about what language choices she is making in that sentence that seem especially persuasive to you. Okay, go for it. Just a discussion. You don't need to write anything down.
Wait, but wait, Travis. Travis? What's going?
I don't know.
I can't believe you just added to it.
I know.
What?
Sorry, I'm standing.
What school?
They go to Harriman probably.
We don't know that.
Are you guys discussing the language choices? Yeah. Okay, you'll have to write the paper on it, so you want to have a head start.
Okay, language choices. So, I think maybe a little bit, what do you think? Wait, oh, she is typing right now? Yeah, I thought it was Kennedy. Like that's
We like know the name.
But this part right here, when she's like describing the people in like the place of English, very negative.
Yeah.
People are ugly.
Wait, she's typing for like 5 minutes.
She's not gonna type.
And now she's not typing.
Okay, you just got a couple observations out there. I'm hoping the groups had different observations. So I'm just going to kind of visit with some groups randomly, and you guys tell me what you were saying about the language choices she's making. So you guys up here, what were you guys talking about for the language choices?
I was kind of saying she's just very over-exaggerated about yeah, just very over-exaggerated.
Okay, which part feels exaggerated?
The part where she says, flat out declaration of war.
Good. Okay. So we're saying far worse, in fact, a flat out declaration of war would have put me on alert. So it seems here that she's saying a flat out declaration of war would have been better than just kind of the insidious, the sneaky kind of indoctrination, the subliminal messages that they were sending her about England, right? And to you, that feels like a little bit exaggerated. Okay, well, tell me why it feels exaggerated. Actually, I'm going to go to the rest of the class. Why does that little statement feel exaggerated, or do you disagree? What do you think, Lydia?
I mean, it's exaggerated a little bit. Like, more thousands of people dying is something that's very tragic.
Yeah.
And so saying that, like, I don't know, a war would have been better than what happened to us, I guess that could be exaggerated, but at the same time, even though people were physically dying, their culture was dying because English culture was being forced upon them. So I think that would be a reasonable connection, I guess.
Good, good. That was beautifully put. Yeah, Kim.
It's clear that she's never had any experience with actual war.
Okay.
It's kind of like she's using a metaphor for war, but not understanding what it is.
Okay, now let's take that observation and connect it back to the thesis statement. So you guys are saying that she's exaggerating this part. It doesn't feel realistic, right, to compare what happened in the classroom to an actual act of physical war. And part of that is because it's not about reality. In war, people actually die, right? But in this kind of a war, it's more metaphorical. And then what Kelly's saying is it's like she's never had that physical experience, so how could she then form a correct opinion about it, right? Okay, why would that be a really good strategy for her to use, this exaggeration strategy? Why would that be a good Sorry. Why would that be a good strategy to use to prove this thesis statement?
Yeah. Well, even though she hasn't experienced one, maybe she's trying to talk to people who have.
Okay.
And because people who have experienced one would be like, oh my gosh, this is what they're.
Okay, good. So she's trying to maybe like connect with people on their experience of the world, and maybe they don't know what it feels like to be colonized by another country, but they do know what it feels like or they at least have more understanding of what war is. I do think that's true. Like that's the reasons why writers use metaphors in general, right? But look at the actual specific thesis too, that it is about how she is not able to form opinions based on physical reality. So why would this strategy be a really good way of showing her audience that she's not able to form opinions based on her own physical reality? Did that question make sense? Nod or shake your head? Not really. Okay, let's look at it again. So she is saying that England invaded her country and then has basically not let her enjoy her own country. You know, it's like maybe she loves all the sun in Antigua, but because England invaded and they said, well, in our culture we don't have sun, so that's a better way to understand the world. You should prefer rainy days instead. Then she's saying, well, then I didn't get to like base thoughts on my own experience of the world, right? Like I didn't get to base my thoughts on the actual sunshine that I enjoy. So by using the exaggeration here, she's saying, I don't get to base my judgments on what the real world is actually like. I can only use English ways of understanding the world. And England has been to war quite a lot, maybe more than anybody else, I would say, right? England has been in a lot of wars. So her using that as an exaggeration actually illustrates her point that the English way of thinking has invaded her thoughts and she isn't able to form her own opinions. Does that make sense? Not if that makes even a little sense. Okay, so that was a really great one to grab onto. That was a really great strategy. Okay, back here to Maddie. What was the one thing that your group pointed out about language choices that she's making?
We noticed that she kind of, she said there wasn't a war I had already been conquered, not we had already been conquered.
Good. Why do you think that would be something very persuasive for her to do for this argument?
Well, if you just say about your personal experience, you don't have to justify like if other people disagree with you, you're saying my personal experience.
Yeah. Good. So she's kind of saying like my personal experience should be the way that I make choices then. My personal experience, I should be the center of my own life. I should be the main story or the main character in my life, right? And yet she is conquered. So I think that's good, like to keep this I to the essay, not saying that you have to base your opinions on what other people think. Yeah. Okay, back here to Nat, Olivia, Matthew, right? You guys? And Mercedes, what was something that you guys noticed in the language choices?
They don't use these words that kind of make her kind of like a victim, like conquered.
Okay, good.
It makes her feel like oppressed a little, so like makes us feel like.
Okay, so it turns her into a kind of victim. Now, lots of times we'll say that negatively, right? Like, oh, she always thinks she's such a victim here, right? But do you think that this is a good persuasive choice that she made? Matthew, why are you nodding your head?
I think it is because I think that she's trying to get us to think that England are kind of the bad guys in this scenario.
Uh-huh.
Trying to get us to give her empathy, kind of.
Yeah. By the end of this essay, were you guys fond of her, or were you kind of annoyed by her?
I was a little.
Yeah, me too. Okay, tell me why.
It was just because she was
Yes.
intense. She
Yes.
wasn't taking a look at, like, I understand a lot of it was England was influencing their ideas, whether they were doing it consciously or they were doing it unconsciously because they just thought it was right.
Mm-hmm.
And that is their fault. They have blame
Yeah.
to accept. But she also has blame to accept.
Yes.
She's heavily influenced by the ideas. She still has these prejudices, even though she's trying to claim that she doesn't anymore.
I think she's still saying she does.
Well,
Like, I think she recognizes them.
yes, but she's not like admitting it.
It's like she's not like owning them, right? Like she's not like, okay, I know I have these prejudices, so I'm gonna fix that. And instead, I think it's kind of both. Like, I think that her claiming to be the victim is part of her argument, which is that this system has turned her into a very annoying tourist. Like somebody who comes into a culture and is like, why aren't things the same way that they are back at home? You guys should do things like we do here in America, you know? It's turned her into that. And so she's like saying, I'm a victim in this. It's not totally my fault. But I also think when she says, like, I have been conquered, like, I do think we're supposed to think, like, we're supposed to think she's a little bit annoying, I think. But we know why. Yeah. Okay, how about this group back here with Scott and Spencer? What did you guys say? And Skyly, right? You were in this group? Oh, sorry. Was it just you two? Okay, what was one thing you guys noticed about the language?
We noticed a lot, like, how few a bunch of negative words, like, were conquered, like, especially conquered, because, like, when you conquer something, like, completely overcome it.
Oh, I like that.
Absolutely.
Completely, absolutely overcome. So it really starts to tell us about this idea that it erased her, you know, like that she's like doesn't get to be a person anymore. And I like how you guys were finding the patterns. Did you notice how they were finding, and you guys too, you found this I, right? You were finding the patterns in the negative words throughout the sentence. Really good. Okay, let's do one more. So Spencer and Kylie, you guys were together. Okay, what was one thing you guys noticed?
You were saying about how, like, she said that would have been better, would have put her on alert.
Uh-huh.
So, like, if she had known that these things were happening, she would, like, take action.
Good. Good. So why do you think that was a really good persuasive word to use in that sentence then? That word alert. What are the connotations of alert? When do we hear, I just want you guys, when do we hear, sorry, that was probably confusing because you guys can't. When do we hear the word alert often? Anyone else have an idea when we hear the word alert? Matthew? Okay. Okay, good. So there's like a kind of darkness to the word, Scott?
When there's like some form of danger.
Some kind of danger? Good, yeah. Maddie? You're gonna say danger too? Were you gonna say the same thing, Keisha, or did you? Yeah, good. Okay, so this word dangerous, the nighttime thing is really interesting to me because it kind of sounds like anxious. The word is like full of anxiety. Like when you hear the word, you know, I think of red alert, like kind of like a call system that you need to be on edge at all times. So if it would have been that way, it would have then created this idea, this idea of then she could have been full of action, right? And so she kind of uses that word to say, that would have been a possibility for me. I'm not so terrible that I would just sit back and let these things happen to me. But I had already been conquered. Yeah.
Honestly, I don't believe it.
You don't believe what?
I don't believe it.
Oh.
Like, I feel like she hasn't really done that. She didn't like see anything of like the action when she did realize.
Yeah.
She didn't like go back to her home and like open up a school or something to teach like her history.
Interesting.
And to look at the world without prejudice.
Interesting. What would be her response to that? Why would she say why she didn't then jump into alert?
Maybe because she had already done this. I mean,
yeah.
I feel like as Americans, we tend to look at things and like, be like, oh my gosh, panicking.
Yeah.
But then we're like, oh, it's just the natural, like the flu.
Yeah.
It's like very dangerous, but we just stopped thinking.
I think that's what she's saying. I think she's saying like there could have been this possibility for alert, but I had long ago been conquered. Why doesn't she use the phrase, I had already been conquered? Why use long ago? I want to ask Zach this. Zach, why do you think? Oh, Keegan, you had something. Sorry. I'll come right back to you.
I think it displays more of a there's no going back.
No possibility of going back. And Keegan, what were you going to say?
I was just gonna say something like him, like it's like what's done is done, like no going back. I guess.
Yeah. So it's almost like washing your hands of it, like being like really pessimistic then about your own ability to change. Yeah. And again, though, she's saying that the fact that they taught her this way is what created that kind of pessimism in her. And she doesn't like it about herself. Like she wishes she could throw all that pessimism and all that hatred of the British off the cliffs of Dover, but she just doesn't feel like she can do that because they erased her personality. All right, did you notice how we like really picked apart that sentence? We were thinking the whole time, why is she choosing these words and not different words? Why did the word alert stand out to us, and why was that an effective choice for her to make to persuade her audience of her argument? So that's kind of the goal of your essay. You're gonna find things in the language, you're gonna find patterns in the language, like Maddie's group back here did, finding the personal pronouns, the I, and that she's just talking about herself. Or like you guys did up here, finding the exaggeration. And then you'll write a whole paragraph about when she exaggerates in the essay and why that was a good strategy. So in order to do this, I think we need to talk a little bit about paragraph structure. I'm actually going to start a new